on, you know this one. Sing it out.
Salvation is calling. Salvation is calling. Falling so far, you don't even know how.
Sing it out now.
You are going to survive. But beyond the horizon, a new light is shining. Breaking through the darkest night. Love is coming, and it's calling out your name. Lift up your face, lift up your face. Salvation is calling, salvation is calling. Lift up your face, lift up your face. Salvation is calling, salvation is calling. Feel like your life is fading, tired of waiting. For your moment to arrive. Tomorrow will bring a song that you can sing, and your hope is gonna rise. Love is coming, and it's calling out your name. Lift up your face, lift up your face. Salvation is calling, salvation is calling. Lift up your face, lift up your face. Salvation is calling, salvation is calling. Lift up your face, lift up your face. Salvation is calling, salvation is calling you.
It's calling you.
Salvation is calling, salvation is calling. Lift up your face, lift up your face. Salvation is calling, salvation is calling. Lift up your face, up now.
Lift up your face.
Lift it up now.
Salvation is calling.
It's calling you home.
Salvation is calling. Lift up your face. Lift up your face. Salvation is calling. Salvation is calling.
Just look up on the horizon, new light is shining. Salvation is on its way.
All right.
Well, switch gears here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life. It is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life. Holy ways, oh Lord, so I can walk in your truth. Teach me your holy ways, oh Lord, and make me wholly devoted to you. Oh, 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 it is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life. Open my eyes so I can see the wonderful things that you do. Open my heart up more and more and make me wholly devoted to you. Oh, oh, oh. It is the cry of my heart to follow you. It is the cry of my heart to be close to you. It is the cry of my heart to follow all of the days of my life. Oh, 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 all of the days of my life. Oh, oh,
Oh,
all of the days of
my life.
Oh, great song.
Welcome to Riverwood Church, a place for people who may have given up on church but haven't given up on God. If that's you, you're in a great place, and you made a great decision to join us today, because we're really not that concerned about where you've been. We're much more concerned about where you're going. So it's our sincere hope that you'll hear something today in the message, directly from the Bible, that will tell you just a little bit about who God is, what His purpose is for you, and how that can change you, of course, forever. But before we get started, while I finish setting up here, why don't you stand up, spring up the house lights a little bit, and welcome someone you don't know to Riverwood. Next, I wanted to draw your attention to the program you received when you came in today. If you didn't get one when you entered, there's an usher coming down the aisles right now with extras. Just raise your hand, they'll be happy to give you one. Inside your program, you're going to find a connection card. If you haven't done so already, would you take this card out and begin filling this out? If it's your first or second time with us, be sure to fill out as much information as you feel comfortable sharing. But if you're a member or regular attender, just your name and email address and any information that might actually have changed. So, one of the main reasons we ask you to complete this card each week is because we believe that God has a next step for you to take today. And by filling out the front of the card, you're letting God know that you're ready to take some of the next steps that are on the back of the card during today's message. Now, we'll be sharing more about those next steps in the message and after the message today. So, hang on to your card. We'll collect them at the end of the gathering during the offering. And speaking of the offering, if you came prepared, it's a good thing I'm not preaching today. I can't say P. If you came prepared to give today, you'll want to fill that offering envelope out, and we'll worship through giving at the end of today's service. Now, take out your message notes, grab your connection card, and let's continue on with.
All right. Boy, that guy was pretty good up there. And we liked it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about church, but that's more at the end. Today we're continuing our story about Acts, and it's Acts now and then. So if you take out, inside your program is your notes. And so if you take this out, this will help you to follow along better, and it'll help me to stay on task better. So our first keynote, if you look at the first part, I say, why was Paul troubled? So why was Paul troubled? Again, we're reading Acts, and what I'm going to try to do is focus on where it was then in Acts, and then how does that relate to us today. So let's read Acts 17, 16, and 17. It says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was deeply troubled by all the idols he saw everywhere in the city. He went to the synagogue to reason with the Jews and the God-fearing Gentiles, and he spoke daily in the public square to tell all who happened to be there. So, if you look on here, I had Josh put this up for me. That's Athens right there. Athens was huge in the far right-hand corner. Same with over there, but I'm going to look at this screen. But over there is Athens. That, if you scooch over to the top row, that is Athens from a distance. So this was a place that you could see from a distance. That's where the Parthenon is, if you remember back in school when you had your Greek history and your Greek mythology. Down there is when I'm talking about, they had this big statue, and that is the statue of the unknown God. And basically what they had is a pedestal, and it said to the unknown God. Now, when we look at that, when I first saw that, I thought, okay, so this thing is about the size of something you would have in your garden. No, that thing was like as big as this stage, and probably this high. Those statues, the rest of the picture actually showed people walking, and their heads didn't even come up to that first level. So those statues in Athens would touch the ceiling, if not bigger. They were probably 20 feet high, so they were huge. And they were all around the city, and they were all about the Greek gods. And then down below, I just show, as you go up, the Parthenon's up there, and the different temples and the different marketplaces. So this, at the time, was a pretty big and modern city, but it was all about, it was the capital of Greece. So It was a place to be. It was a place to go. All the philosophers and the poets all were there. So, Paul goes to the city and he sees this. So he's walking around and he's disturbed. He's like, this is ridiculous. All these idols that they're worshiping. So he doesn't jump to conclusions, but he goes to the church and he goes to the synagogue and he goes to those that were believers, Gentile believers, and he's asking them. Now, it doesn't tell us, but I'm assuming he's thinking, what are you doing? How is this happening? How are you letting this happening? And what are you doing about it? Because there were synagogues and there were believers, but yet all this was going on. So he goes and he reasons with them. And then when he doesn't get the answers he wants, he takes matters into his own hands. And we see in 17, he spoke daily in the public square to all those who happened to be there. So he took matters into his own hands and he did something about it. So that was then. This is now. What is our takeaway from this first part? If you know something's wrong, don't sit idly by and do nothing. Now, I put idly by in there. That was my little idly by joke. Get it? Idols, idly by. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I will laugh at my own jokes. Ask my wife. So, yeah, that's going to happen. So the point is here, though, I tell this to my kids at school, too. If you see a piece of paper on the floor, just don't walk by it. Pick it up. Yeah, but it's not mine, Mr. Lejeski. So what? It's your school. Pick it up. We're wrong when we see something that's wrong and we don't do something about it. So our takeaway, do something about it. Don't sit idly by. Key number 2. Why did Paul challenge the philosophers of ancient Greece? So we're going to read 17:18 to 21. He also had a debate with some of the Epicurean, I don't know, and Stoic philosophers, sorry. I said it right the first time I read it. When he told them about Jesus and his resurrection, they said, what's this babbler, like I just sounded there, trying to say with these strange ideas he's picked up? And then others said, he seems to be preaching some foreign gods. So they took him to the high council of the city and said, come tell us about this. We want to know more about it. Now it should be explained that Athens, as well as the foreigners in the Athens, seem to spend all their time discussing the latest ideas. So he goes there and he starts talking, and they're like, what is he talking about? This is so weird. But to show how weird that city is, they don't shut him down. They say, come tell us more. We're interested in this weird thing you're talking about. They want to know more, because back then, if you've seen some of the old movies and that, and again, remember back to Greek philosophy, that's all they did. They were the guys that sit there in the coffee shop and they just discuss things that they can't do anything about. So, no, I mean, if you had philosophy in college, you know it. I was like, what? That's the old, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise? Who cares? You know, I mean, you know, I was walking through the woods the other day and I thought, and I know this is my rabbit trail, but I thought, what? Really, who cares? I'm like, ask the animals that it hit and were running. I think they probably heard it, and they ran. Okay, back to the story. Okay, so, I digress sometimes, I'm sorry. Okay, so, that's why we have notes. Not just for you, but for me. All right, so moving on. What did Paul do? Why did he do it? That was then, this is now. He engaged them with what they knew. He talked to the philosophers because that's what they did in those days. So, he was willing to challenge them because he wasn't afraid of them. He's willing to go up against them. So, that was then. This is now. So, what are you going to do to engage people around you? Because that's what Paul did. He talked about stuff they knew. So, don't go to them and talk about stuff they don't know. Talk about stuff they know. So, maybe, just maybe, it's fantasy football. Maybe it's bolt action. Maybe it's... maybe it's... the grass. My neighbor Herbie loves his grass. I could care less about his grass. And I don't mean that grass. I mean, you know, the... Sorry, I digress. I gotta get a laugh every now and then. Okay, so... But the point is, he loves his grass. He once told me... See, I'm doing it again. But he once told me he loved his grass more than his wife. And I'm like, And his wife was right there. And then he told me they don't always get along. And I'm thinking, well... Could be you love your grass more than your wife, and you just said that in front of her. So... But talk about them with things they know. Okay, it's hard to invite somebody to church if, hey, you're going to come to church. Who are you? I don't even know you. You never even talked to me. Yeah, but you should come to church. Doesn't work. All right, so when I was probably in my 30s, Sue and I had just gotten married, and her whole family, her whole side of their family, they were hunters. And so I wanted to get in with the other side of the family, so I went out and I bought the orange outfit. What? What? Blaze orange, yeah, whatever. And then I bought a shotgun because they told me I had to buy a shotgun. Of course, I didn't buy a 12 gauge. I bought a 20. Nobody told me, and the guy at Walmart, he seemed to know what he was talking about. I mean, I know he was like 16 and fresh out, just in high school, but he seemed to know what he was talking about. So I got that, and then I had to buy the whole thing you put on your back, the license, and it was horrible. Hated it. But why did I do it? I didn't do it for me. Well, I did, but I mean, I did it for them. I did it for me to get to know them, for them to let me in their inner circle, because every time I talked to them, they would be talking about hunting stuff, and I didn't know anything about hunting stuff. And they found that out when they took me hunting. But I like the other part. I like the part where you go out after. That's the fun part. The hunting part, I swear to you, 90% of the time I didn't even load my gun. I'm like, probably dangerous. All right, so. So I didn't have a gun. And remember, if you were here a while ago, you heard how I shot into the wall with my pistol. All right, so takeaway number 2. How do we engage people around us? We keep them engaged by talking about what they know and are interested in. What they know and are interested in. Because or else, why would they want to talk to us? How do I invite somebody to church if I don't even know them? They don't even care about me. Key number 3. Why did Paul point out the unknown idol? Now remember, that unknown idol was huge. Everybody in the city knew what he was talking about. Hence the reason he did it. So, isn't that a good word, hence? So, Acts 17. So Paul, standing before the council, addressed them as follows. I noticed that you are very religious in every way. For as I was walking along, I saw your many shrines, and one of your altars had its inscription on it, to an unknown God. This God, whom you worship without knowing it, is the one I am telling you about. They all knew it. He mentioned their beliefs in their gods to say, good for you. And I say kinda because we already know Paul was irritated by this. But he brought up something they knew. And he said, standing before the council, I notice that you're very religious in every way. He complimented them. Wow, good for you. I'm glad you like football. I'm a Packer fan, you're a Bear fan, and I don't like the Bears, but I'm glad you like football. We can talk football now. Even though we don't have the same teams, we can talk a little football now. And then he followed that up with that unknown God you worship, because they did worship that unknown God. So he brought that up. You know that big statue? And they're like, of course we know that big statue. Because they worshipped it. So he said to them, hey, I'm going to tell you about that. And who doesn't like that? Who doesn't like if somebody says, I'm going to tell you what's behind door number 1? You're like, really? Cool. I want to know that. I want to know. So he keyed into something they wanted to know. So that's what we need to do. He didn't insult them. Okay? He didn't insult them. He didn't agree with them, but he didn't insult them. John 3:17. Most of us know John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gives only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. We all know that verse. But the verse we don't go to is 3:17. For Christ sent his Son into the world not to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. That's a key. He didn't send him in to condemn them. He came to save them. He came to save them. Like I said, he told them what he was going to do. He told them what he was going to give them. So I had 2 stories. I'm not going to give you both. I'll give you 2 stories. And I was thinking about this in the back, and I know this is kind of unchurchy, but I'm going to let you decide what story I give you. So, all you got to do is raise your hand. Kelly's looking at me like, what? So, I can either tell you story A is about when I was a national sales manager, and story B is the mechanic at my house. So, if you want to hear story number 1, raise your hand. That's the national sales manager, and that's, when I was a national sales manager, I went to California. Okay, story 2 is the mechanic. All right, the mechanic wins hands down. Okay. All right, so this isn't that classic? All right, so I'm going to tell them both of them anyways. No, I'm not. So The mechanic comes to our house, and it's not even for me, it's for my daughter. And it's actually not for my daughter, it's for her boyfriend. His van broke down in my yard. So this guy comes, and a nice guy, and he starts working on the van. And he's working on it, and I go out to talk to him, and he gets it all done, and he leaves, and I walk in the house, and Shannon, my daughter, who's doing the sides in the back, says to me, "Wow, Dad, looks like you made a new best friend." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you guys were yucking it up pretty good out there." That's probably not her word, but it's my word, okay? So anyway, she says, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, within 10 minutes, you were like best friends." And I said, I just talked to him. I like people, so I talked to him. So basically what I said is, he came out there and I said, "Hey, what's your name?" And he said, "Kevin." I said, "Hi, I'm Todd." And he's like, "Oh, is this your van?" I said, "No, it's Matt's van." And he's like, "Oh, okay." I said, "So is this going to take long?" And he said, No, it's pretty easy." I'm like, "Wow, that's cool. You know what you're doing. I don't know squat about cars, just about riding mowers." But you had to be there for that message too. I don't know anything about riding mowers either. So I said, "Wow, good for you. I'm glad you know that." I said, "There's 3 things in life you got to know. You got to have a good lawyer, you got to have a good banker, and you got to have a good mechanic, somebody you can trust." And he's like, "Yeah." So we get to talking, and before you know it, I find out about this guy that he's engaged, and why he told me this, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. But then he told me that his fiance is African American. This is a white guy. And she's got a little son that's, I think he's 5 years old, so he's going to school. So I said, "Oh, well, that's really cool. I'm a teacher." And, "Oh, you are? Okay." And then we talked about school a little bit and about kids. And I said, "So isn't it different when you," now key in on this, "isn't it different when you have kids? How different that is?" I said, "Do you guys go to church?" And he said, "I don't really have time for that. I work a lot, do the side job stuff." And I said, "Oh, I get that. But usually when you have kids, you want to bring them up in the right way. So you want them to bring them to church." And he's like, "Yeah, you know what? I guess you're right. We have talked about that." I said, "Yeah, you should come to our church. I even talk sometime." What? I keyed him in. But how did I do that? I did that by being interested in him. Now let me flip that for a minute, because we do this without knowing it. Let me flip the story. I could have said this. "So, hey, Kevin, I'm Todd. How you doing?" "I'm doing pretty good." "You fixing the van?" "Yeah, I'm fixing the van." "How long is it going to take?" Probably like 15 minutes or so." "Good, so it's not going to cost me much." "Good." "Woo." "So, you like being a mechanic?" "Yeah, I like being a mechanic." "Oh, really?" Because my uncle hated it. His hands were always dirty. He could never get that off. He always felt dirty. Pretty soon he's got his hands in his pocket. I say, "So, Kevin, did you have to go to school for this?" "No, I just took some classes." "Oh, really? I have 3 degrees. Woo, look at me." "Hey, Kevin, you want to come to church?" The guy thinks I'm a jerk. I didn't do that. But I'm saying we need to be careful when we talk to people, because we can insult them and we make it about us. It wasn't about us. It was about him. It was about Kevin. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back, even though it seems like it. I'm really not. I'm trying to say I was honestly interested in him. And I thought what he was doing was very cool, because he was helping Matt out. He just charged him for parts. It was a great thing. So, takeaway number 3. Talk more about them than about you. Don't be that guy on a date that just talks about yourself and the girl's just falling asleep. Don't do that. Okay, talk more about them than about you. Key 4. Why did Paul ask questions he already knew answers to? So why does Paul ask questions he already knew answers to? Acts 17:24 through 31. I think I'm going to read it on this one. "He is a God who made the world and everything in it. Since he is Lord of heaven and earth, he doesn't live in man-made temples. And human hands can't serve his needs, for he has no needs. He himself gives life and breath to everything, and he satisfies every need. For one man he created all nations throughout the whole earth. He decided beforehand when they should rise and fall, and he determined their boundaries. His purpose was for the nations to seek after God and perhaps feel their way towards him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and exist. Some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. And since this is true, we shouldn't think of God as an idol designed by craftsmen from gold or silver or stone. God overlooked people's ignorance about these things in earlier times, but now he commands everyone everywhere to repent of their sins and turn to him. For he has set the day for judging the world with justice by man he has appointed, and he provided to everyone who this is raised for him by the dead. For by him raised from the dead. Okay. So, what does Paul do here? Then, again, when he talks to them, he relates everything he's talking about to what they know. Okay? He brings up the sacrifices. Because how weird it sounds, they would bring food sacrifices and other offerings and lay them before those big statues, before the gods. So he talks about that stuff. And then he talks about God doesn't need you to serve him. He can take care of his own needs. He doesn't need that. And then he relates things to powerful God. What a powerful God our God is, or what he coins as the unknown God. And he relates that to Zeus and other gods, because that's what they knew, that Zeus was the most powerful god. And he talked about Poseidon, he talked about Hades. So he mentions these other gods that they knew, again, if you go back in your Greek mythology. So they knew this. So again, he wasn't talking some weird thing. He talked about what they knew. And then as he's talking, just like when I'm talking, you're talking, he starts to notice that they're starting to be like, what? They're disagreeing with him a little bit. People might even be shaking his head like, no, God. We need to, any God that we need to feed, and we need to do this and that. And he says, he keys him back and he says, but your old poets even said that. He says that in verse 28. He says, for in him we live and exist. For some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. So what does he do? He brings back what they said. It's kind of like when, you're in an argument with your wife and you say, yeah, but you said I could buy whatever I want, right? And then she says, yeah, but not a 1941 Jeep for $20,000. You said it. So the point is, he brings it back and he's kind of like, you said it. You were the one. So he keys them back in, so they have but no choice to say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So what does this mean to you? What do you do when you're talking to someone? So I hear that you go to church. Yeah, I go to church every now and then. Yeah, but I mean Christmas and Easter, right? Well, yeah, that's important. Yeah, it is important. Isn't it? Church is important. You're opening up that whole can there. You're opening up. Then you could say, well, you know what? Why don't you go another time? You should try church more than just those 2 times. You're already keying into something they've done. You've already got them to say yes to you. Did you go to church? Yeah, on Easter and Christmas. That's your first yes. All right? Then you could talk to them about, hey, so what did you grow up as? I grew up as Lutheran. I grew up as Methodist. I grew up as Catholic. Hey, me too. Do you remember when boom, 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 boom? Now you're in agreement. All of a sudden, this is someone that I can agree with. Someone that can relate to me. Well, you know why I go to Riverwood? Because it's different from that. It's different. We do different things. We have coffee. You have coffee? So it's just a little different. The other thing is, when we talk to people about church, we have to remember that and I'm trying to do this today for you, and I hope I am. A lot of times people relate, yeah, but that happened back then, and this is now, this is then. Yeah, but that was Bible times. Because that was back then in Bible times. It was Bible times. They wore togas and that type of thing. But here's the thing. What I'm trying to show you today is that Paul related just like we can relate to people. See, I could have gone a whole different route with this whole message, and I could have talked about the one philosopher, I can't even say the name, and I could have talked about Stoics, and we could have got all lost. But I think what this is a good example for Paul is how to talk to people and how to respect them. You don't ever want to disrespect anybody. You don't have to agree with them, but you don't have to disrespect them. Okay, keep them in. Make sure you got to really. It comes down to this: you have to really care about people. If somebody knows if you don't really care about them, and it's hard to invite someone to church that you don't even care about, and they know it. They live down the street. Hey, George, you should come to church. Really? Because the other day you almost hit me. So it doesn't really work. So takeaway number 4, keep people engaged by keeping it relevant and relatable to them. Keep it relevant and relatable to them. And I'm going to go back to my main point, my main key. It's not about you, it's about them. Key number 5. So at some point I was reading this and I'm like, why did he stop? So my question is, why did Paul end his conversation with them? Why did he end? When they heard Paul speak about the resurrection of the dead, some of them laughed in contempt. But others said, "We want to hear more about this later." That ended Paul's discussion with them. But some joined him, and they became believers. Among them were Dionysius, a member of the council, and a woman named Damaris, and others with him. Okay, now don't hold me to the sayings of the names, because that's not the important part here. The point is, he ended. He stopped. So I'm going to tell you my takeaway before I tell you my stories. Takeaway number 5. Know when to stop talking. It's tough. It's tough. Now, I know my wife's dying over there, and so are my daughters. But know when to stop talking. Okay? Paul had told them the gospel. He told them the whole gospel story. That was it. Okay, here you go, you got it. That's it. No need to keep, I had to say, beating the dead horse. No need to do that. You got to stand there, and then boom. Just be quiet. Just be quiet. When I asked Mason if this was okay. When I talked with Mason, and I had the joy and the privilege of leading Mason to the Lord, we went through the whole thing. And I asked him questions. I got Mason to agree with me. Why do you come to Riverwood? Why do you do that? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, why do you do that? Well, I play the drums. I'm like, yeah, but you can play the drums anyway. Join a rock band. Yeah, but there's more. Well, what? What are you getting out of it, Mason? And I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but I wanted Mason to answer these questions for me, and he was able to. So one time I went through the gospel message, and I said, you know you're a sinner, yeah? And you know that you're not perfect, yeah? And I said, and I have a way for you to come into a relationship with Jesus Christ. Would you like to do that? And then I was quiet. And then Mason did the right thing. And he said, yes, I want to do this. But I was quiet. I had said my say. I didn't need to beat it over with a dead horse. Are you sure, Mason? Come on, we can talk more. I'll get you some coffee. I didn't do that. I said it, and I was done with it. Okay? Just like if you talk to somebody at home, a neighbor, a friend, you don't have to beat it. No, you've said it. Now be quiet. Let them think about it. There's nothing wrong with that. Here's my step back point. When I was in college, I had the best job ever as far as making money. I made a ton of money at this job. And it was door-to-door sales. And most people don't like door-to-door sales. They hate it. And it was pure commission. And my parents said, don't do it, Todd. It's a horrible idea. You're not going to make anything. And I said, I'm going to make a couple $100 just for the training. It was like 10 hours worth of training, 2 hours a night, nothing to it. So we go through the training, I make the $200, and at the end of the night, they said, okay, now go out and knock and go door to door and just knock. So they gave us this whole spiel. You had to go out there and you had to say, I'll pick on Greg. You had to say, so Greg, what are your interests? Oh, you like history. Yep, you like history. Oh, Greg, I noticed that you got little kids. Do you like Disney? Do you like this? Do you like this whole thing? Do you like news? You know, they have this new thing, CNN. It's offered all the time. This is back in the 80s. So I would go through this whole spiel, and then when it was done, it took like 10 minutes. Then I would finally say, so would you like to sign up for Racine Telecable? And at that point, Greg would either be bored or he'd shut me down, or he'd say yes or no. That's what you were supposed to do. It's not what I did. So I went to the door, and I knocked on the door, and I said, hi. And I said, are you Greg? And he said, yeah, I'm Greg. And I said, hey, listen, my name's Tyler Jeske. I'm in college. I'm trying to make some money. I'm giving away Telecable. It's 1 month free. I noticed you got little kids. You have a VCR. Everybody at the time didn't. You got a VCR? Yeah, I do. Well, if you tape on the VCR, and I talked as fast as I'm talking right now, I said, if you put a tape into the VCR, you can tape whatever you want. You got a month. And I know what you're thinking, Greg. What's the catch? Well, the catch is you have to, after 1 month, they're going to charge you. So get me your calendar. I'll circle the date you want to call them up and say I'm done. What do you think, Greg? Do you want Telecable? Stop. Thank you. Greg's in. And so were 4 other people out of the 25 homes I went to that night. They were in. They bought into it. I stopped and I was quiet. Now, what did this get me? To end my story, it got me $500. I won the contest. We walked around the table and people were like, oh, I got 1, I got 2, I got 3. Why? Because they didn't stop talking. Nobody wants a door-to-door guy to talk for 20 minutes. It's like, boom, here it is. And I could tell within the first 2 minutes whether they wanted it or not. You know, the rolling of the eyes, I don't care. If that happens to you, know when to stop talking. I don't believe in the Bible. The Bible's junk. It's garbage. It's all a bunch of fairy tales. Oh, okay. Okay. What are you going to... Why spin your gears? Stop talking. Continue a relationship with them. Let your life be the story of Christ. Does that put pressure on you? Yeah. Because when you want to go punch them in the face because they did something, you can't. Because you're showing your life is now what you're doing. Okay? So, all I'm saying is know when to stop, just like me. All right, so moving on. Am I on number 5? Did 5. We're on the back page. Thank you. See, that's what happens when I get these rabbit trails. But I'm glad you at least you're with me. Everybody's like, I don't know where he is. I checked out. But at least you're with me. Right? I mean, hey, you could have been like, oh, I don't know. Is he done? Is he going to pray? Okay. So, why do we say, for those who have given up on church but haven't given up on God? It's the weirdest saying. Why do we even say that? I'll tell you why we say that. Because many of us, got to make sure I give you the right words that I had in here. Many of us have been hurt, insulted, and treated poorly by well-intended people in church. We say that again. I'm going to say that again because many of us have been hurt, insulted, and treated poorly by well-intended people in the church. They don't mean to do it. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're saying the right thing. Sue and I, when we first moved to Burlington, went to a church. And I'm a pretty outgoing guy, and I wanted to make friends. So, that really is just water. We wanted to make friends, and I would try my hardest. I'd be like, hey, how you doing? Glad to see you here. And people were like, yeah, okay. But nobody would talk to me. And we left, and I called the pastor, and he said, well, what do you think, Todd? I noticed you haven't come back in a couple of weeks. And I said, why? Nobody talks to me. And he's like, oh, I meant to tell you because you got a goatee and a beard. I'm like, what? Because of my goatee and my mustache? Not a beard. My mustache, goatee? He's like, yeah, that's not really the way things should be done. I'm like, what? Yeah, we don't really like facial hair at this church, so... Right, and I'm like, well, thank you. Now I know it's not for me. But at least I felt bad. I was like, what, am I putting deodorant on? Do I stink? But that's what it was. Well-intended, meant well, but they were going to make sure I didn't fit in. And Josh talked about that before with the church. So we're trying to do things different at Riverwood. Here's the thing. Number 2, we know God brought you here because you still believe. What? We know God brought you here because you still believe there is a God and want to know more about Him. You don't go to a baseball game because you hate baseball. Okay? There's a reason you went. Maybe it's not for baseball. Maybe you just like sitting in uncomfortable seats all, for 3 hours. I don't know. Maybe you like to just do stuff with people. Maybe you like to people watch. I don't know, but you went there for a reason. So if you're here, it's for a reason. Okay? You don't just come because you have nothing to do on Sunday morning, because we all could find other things to do. So you come in here for a reason. So we believe that God brought you here for a reason. 3rd reason. It's probably the hardest one to understand sometimes. And a lot of churches, I think, miss it, and I'm not putting anybody down. Because church isn't about the healthy, it's about the sick. Church isn't about the healthy, it's about the sick. We all have needs. We're all sinners. There's all things we need help with in our life. But I don't want to confuse that with, I look at Riverwood, and we will always be this, as a MASH unit. So, I'm trying to think of the word for it, don't lose it in this, but a MASH unit still needs doctors, and nurses, and orderlies, and the radars of this world. The radars are like the techie, the nerdies. Okay, we need that so that we can help bring others to Christ. Okay, that's why we do things differently. My whole sermon, and I hope you didn't miss it with all my jokes and laughing and that, is Paul was talking to these people. When he talked about then, he related everything to them. He didn't insult them. He kept bringing it back to them. Your gods, your unknown God. You're this, you're that. He related it to them. Same thing for us today. Don't insult people. Relate it to them. Ask them to come to church. We want to show them more. Okay, we do coffee Not for us. We do coffee so that it's comfortable. We don't do rock and roll for us. That's why we had that little skit of me as the old guy. We do it for them. We do it so that it's music they're used to listening to. Music they hear on the radio. It's a beat they know, they're comfortable with. Okay? We're trying to make it about them. When I was a principal, I'm going to end with this. When I was a principal, I used to tell my teachers. I know, hard to believe I was, but when I was a principal, I told my teachers, it's not about you. It's about them. Yeah, but I'm sick of that song. That's the dumbest song. Okay, you know what? Yeah. But you know what? It's not about you. It's about them. When we're at Riverwood and we're serving, it's not about us. I don't want to be on camera too. Okay, then you're missing the point. Then you probably shouldn't be. Because it's not about you, it's about them.
I did not say that.
Someone's feeling guilty. No, I'm just kidding. Am I on? Check, 1, 2, 1, 2, check. Okay. You didn't need to do that. We know that gets me going. So that's it. That's the end. That's what I have for you. I'm going to pray now, but if you can really do something, it's really just, see, I need to stop talking, but my point is, relate to people, like people, bring it to them, relate to them. You need to get to know somebody. Don't just ask someone to come to Riverwood that you've never met ever. Now, if they have like an issue, yeah, maybe. But it works so much better when you start to get to know people. And I'm going to end with, I'm going to do it. I'm going to push it because I'm 2 minutes over. Doug. My buddy Doug, I'm going to put on the spot. Doug wasn't coming to church a lot. But I started golfing with Doug. Well, Doug golfed with me, but we went golfing, and I got to know Doug, and we'd go over to Greg and Dawn's, and I had a fun time with Doug, and Doug and I could relate to the same stories and the same things. See, Doug and I made a connection, okay? And so we became friends, and I really liked Doug. I sincerely liked Doug. Greg always says I stole his father-in-law from him. But he's a friend now. But now Doug will come to church because he wants to hear his friend talk. He's not just coming to church. I hope that's true, and I hope I didn't put you on the spot, and I'm sorry I didn't even ask you, because these things pop in and I just do it. Sorry. But that's how it happened. If I would have just said, Doug, you really need to come to church because you're a sinner and you're going to hell. What? Crazy, man. But that's not what I did. Doug, you want to come to church? No, I got stuff to do. I golf every Sunday. Well, guess what? Doug's here. He's not golfing on Sunday morning. He's here. He's seeing me. Show people you're interested. Show them you like them. Show them you care about them. Relate to them, and they'll relate to you, and they'll want to get to know more. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for giving us your word, giving us the Bible. It's not just about ancient times and ancient people and things that don't mean anything, but you are a living, breathing God. You do care about us, and we thank you for the stories and the people that you've put into our lives, for the stories in the Bible that we can relate to, that help us to understand how to relate to people, how to bring them to you, and that in the long run, Lord, it's all about you. It's not about us, it's about you. So I ask you this week, if we do one thing, Lord, and that is to live for you and let our lives mirror you and what you mean to us. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Hey, so pull out that connection card. All right, this week was all about apologetics. Apologetics is simply about how to share your faith. So, on the back of that card, you're going to find a couple of boxes there. One is tell a friend about your faith. And notice how it's worded there. A friend. Somebody you've taken a real interest in. And like you said, when it's time to stop talking, stop talking. By the way, Todd, it was time to stop talking about 2 minutes ago. The next box there is make a new friend by finding out more about them. Just take a real interest in people around you. Show them that you care about them. Become their friend. And the third one there is on your seats you're going to find 4-ups or flyers for Radical Reach. Now that's the next series, begins next week. It's going to be really good. We're going to take a closer look at Paul. And then, last one is memorize Acts 17, 24, and 25. Nothing changes how you think like memorizing. So now I'm going to have a couple more things. One, the ushers are in the back with the buckets for the offering. You simply drop your envelope in there if you came prepared to give. If not, that's okay. You can mail that envelope in, or you can give online. And on your way out, be sure to drop your connection card in the bucket as well. If it's your first or second, Oh yeah, posters. Hey, we got posters printed out there, and there's lots of places around here that'll let you put them up. So if you sign up for an area and take a few posters to put them up in an area, we'd appreciate it. If you're going to sign up and take posters, don't let them sit in your car. I've been guilty of that a couple of times. So, yes. That's about it. Come early, stay late, make new friends, have some coffee. Yes. Yes, today is Mason's last day. Ships out tomorrow. So, we can do that. Why don't you come up here? So God, we ask that you care for Mason. We ask that as he continues to grow and continues to move, that you show him where you want him to be. He's an amazing kid. He's grown a lot in the last 2 years, and we're going to miss him around here, but I know that you're going to use him to do greater things. And there'll always be a place here if he wants to come back. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Bye. Goodbye.